I just wanted to say a brief sentence about each of the writers, what they're working on. And I will go in the order they will appear, though there will be some other things happening. But this is the order they will read to you. The first reader is Karin Davidson. She's writing about a frightening and captivating little girl named Alba, who keeps all the other kids in line with a combination of very loud charisma and a kind of quiet terrorism. P.R. Griffis is writing about men and masculinity, about guns and good old boys, and getting out of Italy, Texas, with some of yourself intact. Also about trying to make it right in a world that won't allow that. Laura Hoffman is writing about the body and its limitations, and about desire, about oysters and blind dates and longing, and an all too familiar howling loneliness. Mika Taylor writes about strangeness and sadness and female isolation and the power structures that keep that machine oiled. She writes about babies and fairies and every kind of creature, especially the ones that reveal us to ourselves. Mary is next. Mary Johnston writes about misconnections between men and women, about families that lurch toward closeness but more often miss the mark, and about dogs and what would we ever do without them. Kari Shemwell is writing about ambition and fame and body doubles, about making love and fucking and so what, about power and Me Too and who's on top. No, who really is. And finally, Melanie Thorne will be our last reader. She writes about being okay against all odds, about drunken fathers who hate the man, and the kind of resilience where the more you have, the more it seems you will be tested, and about hope, ultimately, for something better. I know you'll enjoy hearing from all of these writers tonight. Thank you again for coming.
Cecile, Davidson, again, to remind you, here's the frightening Alba. Wind in the palms, the endless, shiftless shattering of fronds, their bright green fans crowding the yard. How will it begin? Secretive, the unmaking of a moment. We will watch from the wall of windows, the sunlight, the shadows, restless, moving with the breeze, the palm fronds like percussion, loosening, tightening, senseless, exasperated, sighing. And in the center, Alba, a tiny figure, straight-backed and striped with shadows, will lean and crouch, examining something close to the ground. She will trace a line in the sand, then another and another, and we will know from our own barefoot experience that the sand is coarse, with broken shells and bits of debris. We will worry that her little fingers will become chafed, perhaps charged with calcium and ions and silver-white sadness. Yes, we will worry mostly about the sadness. Alba will continue her tracing motions until the breeze dies for a second. She will look up, her round face framed by our windows and our watching, but we will not see her expression. Will it be Alba happy, content, blissful, exultant in her isolation? Or will it be Alba uninvolved, distant, measured? For a time we won't know, for Alba will hold up her hand to shade herself from the sudden glare. As the wind kicks up again and the palms continue their dance, sunlight skipping through. Closing in, hovering, nearly grazing the wisps of hair on top of her head, we will understand Alba as neither content nor discontent, neither distant nor close, neither measured nor immeasurable. None of these. For there, at her fingertips, it will become evident, are marbles. Her brother Benny's marbles. His blue and red and green, the solids. His black and clear, gray and white, yellow and orange, the swirls. Alba will hold a green solid between thumb and fingers, testing its curves, rolling it back and forth, and she will be humming. No, she will be singing. A song about nothing and everything, about Raggedy Ann and roller skates, about nobody and nonsense, about them and us. Her voice will go up and down, swept and quieted by the staccato palms. La 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 and kangaroos, she will sing, and the palms will shush her. You belong here, and you belong here, and you don't belong anywhere. Alba will sing to the green and the blue and the gray swirled marbles. She will place the green and then the blue into the descending and descending lines she has traced in the sand. And she will send the gray swirled into the garden with the ferns and the vines and the flowers. We will confirm her dislike of sad colors, the ones that make Benny despondent, the ones he never plays with. Like planets, the marbles will extend in concentric circles around Alba, the sun child. Then she will stand, step over the black and clear, the yellow and orange, the blue, and whisper, Mercury, Mars, Venus. And she will follow the sound of our grandmother's voice, calling her to come in for supper. The marbles will stay outside for days and days. In a week, Benny will find them in the driveway, dusted with sand. He will consider them for a moment with the toe of one shoe, and then he will leave them there. Thank you.
Hi. Thanks to Pam, to everyone at the ACA, to everyone in my cohort and all the other artists. It's been a really wonderful experience to get to have this interdisciplinary time with everyone. It's really great. This is called Small Town Texas, 1987. Who could say what brought him there? This guy for whom we made reluctant way as he levered his truck into a spot there alongside the convenience store that served as the focal point for our small town boredom. Late night summer, still in high school or just out of, coasting the back end of various buzzes. What needs sufficed? Welch's grape soda, payday candy bar, pack of Marlboro Reds, box of rubbers. Maybe the dudes were only returning to their accustomed places when they moved in behind his truck in that minute at most interim while he was inside. But now he couldn't get out. Vehicle inextricable. No way forward, and behind him now, all these small town dudes. And Rodney, always there. Always the only black dude. Bumming Copenhagen from the white boys, bogarting joints and shadowboxing. Allowed everything because he was bone deep damaged and crazy and thus holy. And break your heart beautiful with a football as well. Or maybe it's all the same. And me observing, as always, implicated but not involved, hoping to be present for something instead of being told later, secondhand. And it developed that these bored and edgy bandy roosters weren't gonna move out of the guy's way, like too fucking bad. What are you gonna do? The guy playing this low-speed game of chicken, reversing ever so slow that when he finally made contact with Mike McDaniel, wasn't even a bump as much as a nudge. Randy May and Mike McDaniel leaping at this, their cue, hollering out like, hey, whoa there, motherfucker. You like to run somebody over. And then he is out of the truck, brought forth, this guy in his early 20s at best from maybe Maypearl or Mertens, dressed in jeans and boots like half the dudes around here, but definitely not from here, because we know everyone from here. And that is sure as shit not him, which is why the dudes didn't move. Territoriality and boredom needing something to break the deadly tedium which this luckless son of a bitch has just become. Did he say anything in defense, in placation, or did he just stand there, ringed around? 6 of them, 8, standing inside of this circle as I stood outside of it, both of us waiting to see what awfulness would arrive. I remember that Rodney walked up into the guy's face, grinning, Copenhagen bulging out his lower lip, and without breaking eye contact, unzips his pants, pulls out his dick, and starts pissing on the guy's legs, his boots, the ground beneath his feet, all the while looking in the guy's face and tittering, tongue between teeth, pleased with himself in the way that children are. And we are. We are only children who will never grow up. Some of us, seeking violent ends until we find them. And as always, I am amazed to be witnessing this thing that I have never witnessed before, and never imagined that I would. This brand new thing. As the urine darkens the guy's jeans and wets his boots and the gravel on which he is standing, this ground on which he does not belong. No sound now but the sound of water trickling to earth. Later, we marvel at Rodney's exposing of his most delicate self to what seems certain retaliation. We say, you'd have had to kill me, 6 on 1 or no. We say, I'd have come back with a gun and shot every last one of them motherfuckers, by which we mean us. We say, I'd have backed up over all them sons of bitches, dropped it in D, come back over them again. We say the only true thing we say. I ain't never seen no shit like that before. Getting it wrong, as always, backwards, as always. The magician's trick of misdirected attention. We miss the guy turning and walking, boots dark with urine, wranglers wet from the knees down, starting the truck and reversing, everyone parting for him, in pure amazement, some awakened dimension of unnameable sorrow, or both, and driving off, leaving us there. Thank you.
Balincourt.
Oh, my turn? Hi. Thanks for having me. First and foremost, obviously, I want to thank the ACA and Nancy and sorry, I'm blanking out. I'm having a moment. I want to thank everyone at the ACA. I want to thank Nancy. And when I was first talking to Nancy, she mentioned how being here and having us be here is sort of like giving over the keys to like the house, and all of a sudden instilling trust in us, and all of a sudden here we are allowed to just roam freely into this whole little compound by ourselves for 3 weeks. And it feels a little bit like, I was saying, like a little bit like Home Alone meets Survivor, like in the sense that like mom's away and she instills full trust in us. And somehow the beauty of it is when we're all here together, there is no parent and there is no authority, and we all somehow coexisted really well together. And it was really nice just co-inhabiting with different mediums of the writers and the musicians and the artists all sort of coexisting. And having all my perceptions sort of shattered. At first the writers sort of seemed like the quiet, sweet ones, and their stories, as you will see, roared. The musicians sort of seemed like the normal ones, and their music is like the most eccentric music I've ever heard. And the artists, well, we're the guys that come up here and sort of blank out and look out in the audience and try to remember what we were supposed to say. That's me and not necessarily my students. But anyways, for me, the residency was my first residency ever, and it was a wonderful opportunity. It was really a real privilege. And at first, what Nick had to do to entice me to come down here is he had to mention surfing, which I ended up not doing because they only told me once I was down here about the sharks. So there was no mention of the sharks until I came down here. So that sort of threw the surfing part off, and luckily it made me really productive. And I was really inspired also by the artists I worked with. I had 150 applicants to choose from, and it was not an easy process going through so many visual just an overload of visuals, and I think I came up with a really interesting, eclectic mix of artists that really pushed themselves while they were here. They really had the opportunity to sort of, they came in with sort of these preconceived notions of what they were doing, and I think we all sort of pushed each other, and they really opened up a lot of doors and new possibilities for their work. And I think what this place is really about in the end is sort of just breaking out of your own normal patterns and ways, and finding some new, a new path that entices or inspires. And I think it did for all of us, or it did for me as well. And but the one person I want to thank almost more than anyone is Alexa. I don't know where she is. And Morgan, who helped her as well. Because Alexa and Morgan were sort of like the binders of this place. The food and the eating and the tables in the lounge is sort of what brought us all together to sort of exchange ideas and talk with the weird sound artist guys and intermingle with different tribes. And Alexa also allowed me to cook a little bit with her, so I was no longer at all any master or anything. I was just her sous chef in the kitchen, and I learned a lot, and that was great.
You hold your own in there, baby.
Okay. And who else am I forgetting? Ivan, wherever you are, right? Thanks for all your help. Thanks for the ride over to my talk and kind of like helping me not be nervous for my talk.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, best dressed B-man, I forget your name, but Doug. And Pam and everyone else, thanks. I'm sure I forgot all sorts of stuff I was supposed to. My students were great, go see their work. Okay.
Hi, I'm Laura Hoffman. It's great, she says. Then while her date turns around to look out the window at the harbor, she spits the oyster into her napkin. She hates the idea of its living flesh in her stomach. She's never had oysters before, never cared to try, but wanted to be agreeable on her first date in months. Her seat faces the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the city, where they took the ferry from to have dinner. The skyscrapers reflect strands of pale yellow and orange light across the surface of the water. I read somewhere that New York Harbor once contained half of the world's oysters, the date says. He continues to talk, and she nods along, participating just enough so that she can coast through dinner, and not enough to keep her from continuing to eye the city behind him. She is new to New York, followed a boyfriend here who broke up with her soon after. She had only ever seen New York on TV, and it's exactly and nothing like she expected. She spends a lot of time high above the ground, 29th floor office cubicle, tiny 4-floor walk-up apartment. She can have anything quickly delivered to her door, her clean laundry, toilet paper, halal, weed, anything she wants, except anything but what she wants. Her first month here, she barely slept, night nearly as bright as day, the lights extinguishing the stars. How is it there, her friends back home ask. It's New York, she says, as if that's an answer enough. She doesn't tell them how she longs for silence, for dark so thick she can't see her palm in front of her face. She doesn't tell them about the panic pressed against strangers in the subway car, about how the sky has been flattened to a geometric shape. She doesn't tell them that sometimes when she can't sleep, she imagines she's a child again and her mother is in the kitchen cooking to her scratched Beatles records, she and her brother in the backyard digging up earthworms, pitching a tent at night, flashlight beams cleaving the dark. She doesn't tell them that sometimes she thinks the sirens are coming not from the streets, but inside her own head. Her date is still talking. She knows she will never go out with him again. Sand from the spit-out oyster rubs between her molars. From where she is sitting, if she lifted her palm, she could shield the entire city from view. On the ferry ride back, in spite of herself, she lets her date wrap his arms around her as she leans against the orange railing. Put yourself out there, her friends back home text her, and so here she is, out there. The water looks like liquid obsidian, and she is surprised at the way its otherworldly beauty makes something quiver in her chest. The city draws closer, grows larger and larger. Although she has never believed, she imagines making the sign of the cross the way her Catholic mother does when she enters or passes a church. She thinks about what her date said about the oysters and pictures the floor of the harbor covered in thousands of serrated oyster shells. She wonders if light can reach all the way to the bottom. She wonders how many years it takes for grit to turn into a pearl. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mika Taylor. I want to thank everybody. I don't know if you can tell, but everything people are reading, we wrote basically overnight. Pam would give us an exercise, and then we'd go home. And just knowing that everyone else was showing up with such incredible work, it just drove me in a way that I've never I had a lot of panic the first weekend, and then I got really sick and slept a lot. But it was like there was this the thing always in front of us, and I came up with some stuff that surprised me, which never happens. But or no, always happens. I don't know. Well, but I want to thank you guys for everything. But yesterday we went on a walk on the beach, and we went to Casa Diego. This is what came out of it. Your head is a sack of sand slung at the high water mark while words and waves wash past. Your body is better, and this place is full of sky. 3 kinds of gulls float and stand on the shore. Some are trash gulls from your childhood, the gray kind you won't look at directly if you can help it. But there are also more delicate ones with black heads and an intelligence that's not just malicious, but thoughtful maybe too. There's a gull that looks like James Cagney, Pam says, with a black hat, but not that black hat. And just then you see 3 Cagney gulls grouped like they're in line at the speakeasy saying, "Here, see?" Chests puffed and necks tucked. Their hats are different, black just on top with enough flair to suggest a tight brim and a jaunty feather, a pocket square, a watch chain. They strut for you in their golden spats, and the water washes in. Pipers scurry, to and fro you think, though that's not the way you talk. They're so small, so spry, their legs lilting towards older phrases, the staccato hop of the reel-to-reel. You'd forgotten about sandpipers until you saw them again here, chasing waves, dipping little beaks into bubbling holes, fishing out crabs. You and your brothers dug in those holes too, and collected what the birds wanted. Why is it you forgot the pipers but remembered the gulls? How can you so clearly see an evening when you were 3 years old? 2, a hot dog in your childish fist, held up away from the sand, and then just the bun, empty, a gull floating off with your dinner, not too quickly, but too permanently. It's a feeling you've felt since, surely, but never so pure. The feeling of being robbed, taken from. That was your dinner, and you won't get it back. You go to a town built on spiritual vortexes, vortices, where every resident is a psychic medium. They claim magic you cannot see, but you seldom see what others do without an extra intent and focus that on most days you find exhausting. The town is bright and quiet and doesn't feel awful. The trees are taller than those by the shore and draped in Spanish moss. The houses are weather-worn but sturdy, and the implied spiritual forces make them something more. Everything really is drenched in the light of this magic you've been promised. It all seems pretentious, the moss, the trees, the buildings, the flowers, the crane poised on the edge of a still pond. A frog body splayed under a bench has spilled its entrails for you, you the only one here who cannot read them. And all the birds of the last few days now seem to augur in the Roman way, where God's wills could be seen in their flights, their sound, their type and grouping. Somehow you are a priest to laughing gulls and sandpipers, to snowy egrets, the great ibis, the kingfishers and turkey vultures and blue heron and brown pelicans. A priest without your staff or your robes, without your scrolls and study. The birds fly high, painting the will of gods whose language you do not speak. You hope you are neutral enough, kind enough, quiet enough to fall under their auspices, though you have no means of knowing. There are other portents too, lawn decorations and hand-painted signs, concrete Buddhas and Mardi Gras beads, rusted roofs and cracked cement and silk flowers and decorative flags from the Hobby Lobby or the Dollar Tree. It is all magic, not just the romantic past, the hand-hewn, but the cheap and quick present, the factory-made, the identical millions. They're gathered lovingly in the fairy park with its garden gnomes and molded toads, a smiling mushroom, flowers fake and real, pot shards and plastic combs, ribbons tied to trees, rocks lining winding paths, shapely sticks fallen or found, ornaments and bits of string, trash and treasure all. Crystals, if there were any, have been taken. You can buy more at the gift shop up the way. The plastic beads remain. Maybe mediums are like mockingbirds, gathering every shiny stone and pretty bauble, piling it here in a nest of resonance. Maybe that's how they know the language of birds. Or maybe, like mockingbirds, they just call back what they hear. Repeat, repeat. You cannot see the vortexes, you cannot see the fairies, unless it is all a vortex, unless these are all fairies. Or maybe you are the fairy, the thing most fleeting. You are here and then you die. We all die. Everything, everyone, except the plastic. These beads are the future shining bright. They alone outlast us all.
I'm Meredith Johnston, and I'd like to first of all say thank you to Pam Houston. Thank you to Pam Houston, my literary hero, and my fellow writers who've been fantastic. It's been a life-changing 3 weeks for me, and I have no intention of losing touch with any of them. As well as the other artists, you've all been fabulous. Lexa, Morgan, Ivan, Kelly, Nick, Doug, Nancy, and the ACA, and all our supporters. 2 years ago, she'd been cherub cute, and in 2 years, she'd probably be beautiful. But as my niece stood in the doorway, one shoulder against the wall, as if apologizing for herself, she was still odds and ends that didn't quite fit together. "Can I ask you something?" she said, no hint of a question in her voice. "Sure, baby girl." She very nearly, but did not, roll her eyes at the old nickname. She would have for her mother. "Can you braid my hair? That's your question?" "No, Auntie J, I just want you to, like you used to." I pulled out a chair from the kitchen table and waited for her to sit. "Your hair is so long now," I said, combing my fingers through it. "I'm glad you grew it out again." She shrugged. "It comes and it goes." She sat up tall, so different from her usual slouch, ready for me to start braiding. "I like it long too, I guess." "Then why did you cut it?" "Melissa and I had a dare, and Travis didn't like it long." Her hair was so fine that it almost slipped away between my fingers, the way it had when she was little. "And Travis is?" "Was," she said, "my boyfriend last year. But now he dates Melissa." "Melissa from the dare?" She didn't answer. "I'm sorry." She shrugged. How many teenage words in one shrug? "I am," I said, "sorry." "I'm sorry I lost the dare. It took a year to grow it back. I'm not sure what losing a dare has to do with Travis or Melissa, but I'm glad it's worked out." She leaned forward a bit to counter my pulling, keeping the braid tight, the trust of old habits. I wouldn't pull the sensitive little hairs at the base of her skull, wouldn't make her eyes tear up like her mom would. The strands slipped and twisted between my fingers like a habit, a rhythm. Even when I got to where the hair was too thin, I kept braiding. She held up a rubber band, silent. I took the band and wrapped and rewrapped until it was snug, tight, safe. "He had sticky lips, Travis." "Oh." I knew Melissa had a crush on him. She liked him more than I did. "It's hard to keep up," I said. She let out a long breath, and I was glad I couldn't see her face. "No, Auntie J, it's not when it's your life." "No," I said, "I guess you're right." Anyway, that was freshman year, and now we're sophomores. "And you've got other boys you're interested in?" She reached back and tapped her fingertips along the braid, from the top of her head down to her neck, pulling the tail across her shoulder. "I've got boys I'm interested in," I said. "Sometimes they're not into me. Sometimes we're just out of sync, and later I'm sorry that I missed my chance." She didn't get up, just sat with her back to me. "Yeah, I know, baby girl, it's tough." She nodded. "When I was your age," I said, then felt foolish at the predictable words, but it was too late. I was boy crazy, you know, but such a big dork. I'm still a big dork. She nodded again. I swiped at the tiny hairs on her neck, so blonde in the sunshine. I'm still boy crazy. That's what Mom says. She does, huh? She says a lot of things. She certainly does have an opinion, your mom, always has, but I always knew she loved me, just like I'm sure you know she loves you. I guess. I never had good taste in boys, I said. The nice ones who like me, I don't know. We've always liked the bad ones, right? She didn't move. You see where it's gotten me. Nowhere at all. Nowhere at all, she said, one finger scratching her cheek. Your hair looks nice. Yeah, she said, nowhere at all. I put my hand on her shoulder. You wanted to ask me something? She stood up and turned toward me, as tall nearly as I was. No, she said, I guess not. I thought for a moment of going after her, sliding out the hairband and shaking her braid loose, just so she would sit in front of me again, still, and let me talk and let me listen. Okay, I said instead, and pushed the chair back in. Thank you.
What else to say after so many words? This is what we do. I know it sounds crazy. They call us masters. Before I came here, I was not so sure about that. I had to work a lot to convince myself that I was a master of anything. And I'm still not convinced, actually, because you will hear that we present a concert starting at 8 with all the pieces that has been composed or projects that has been composed during the residency, and you will hear that. It is absolutely fabulous. We just went to the music studio this afternoon, hear all the pieces. And yeah, this concert could be presented anywhere in any professional concert society, I feel. So I feel absolutely privileged to be here with this group of composers. Some of them are young, some of them are a little bit older. They have different experience, but this place, I'm sure they will remember this place forever. And everybody has been thanked, so I just second that deeply from my heart. And I think I would have so much appreciate to have that kind of residency when I was a young composer. So thank you everybody, and everybody is welcome. The show starts at 8. We'll present the concert 3 times tonight. So there's a schedule everywhere, so just drop by and having some fun. This was mono. Just imagine a dome of speakers.
Hello, my name is Kari. Thanks so much for having me. I came here with a short story that I really wanted to work on, and now it's a novel. And that's all thanks to being here, so I'm not going to read the whole novel, though. I watched the actor die on 2 different occasions. The first time I was 8 years old. My mother took me and my sisters to the movies to see a film that I was far too young to see. My mother hardly ever went to the theater, but this movie had created so much popular buzz that even she shelled out the cash for 5 tickets. At this point in time, movies were still magic to me, and the actor was not an actor at all. But rather a living, breathing, handsome young man lost in the tide of a passionate love affair, one that will not end in his favor. This love was deeper than any I had ever seen portrayed in films, let alone actual life. I gripped the edges of my seat as heartbroken words wobbled on the actor's tongue. My throat ached when he laughed. Watching him, I was totally alone in the theater. I couldn't imagine ever having lived without knowing his face. But at the end of the film, the actor drowned. In the water, his jacket spread out from his body like petals peeling away from a flower. He slipped away from me and disappeared into the deep. Sitting there in the dark, I couldn't breathe. I felt as though a wire had been tied around my neck and it would drag me down with him. I cried, heartbroken, and I did so from a place so bottomless I doubted I would ever find the ground. Humiliated, my mother took me to the car and scolded me. When the film was over, the rest of my family joined us there. I wept all the way home and through dinner, and when my mother sent me to bed before sunset, threatening to never again pay to take me to the theater if I didn't straighten up, I cried for the actor alone in my bed until I fell asleep. Now, the actor chokes me. He starts by placing his hand on my throat, gently, touching the hollow of my collarbone like I've seen him do in films. His hand is so large he can easily reach around my neck. He leans down, kisses me, and lifts himself up again. He hovers over me. My legs are wrapped around his waist. Then he begins to push down on my throat, but I stay calm. The weight of his upper body crushes down on me. He stares into my eyes as he squeezes my neck with one hand, easily closing down my windpipe. He fucks me hardest now, never looking away from my face. I'm breathing in short, painful wheezes until I'm not breathing at all. It is in this moment that I think the actor will watch me die, and I'm afraid in a sad, unfamiliar way. I stare back at him. Perhaps he's done this before. I don't even consider escaping. He could smash my esophagus with this one hand alone. But I do wonder how he will get my body from the Ace Hotel, from the top floor, down the interior elevator, and through the crowded bar. I try to reason with myself, though the panic of suffocating creeps up the back of my skull. Surely if he were a murderer, we would know. He can't hold hands with an interior designer outside of a blue bottle without the whole world knowing. How could he get away with murder? It takes everything not to show my fear. Even now, I don't want him to know that he scares me, that I'm not like him, that I can't hold my own out here, that I belong exactly where he found me, standing on a piece of tape in front of a camera that never rolls. So I slowly lift my hand, poised as though I've never once needed air to live, and touch his wrist. He releases me. Oxygen flows into my lungs, but I force myself to take slow breaths. He smiles and says, "Too much?" And I say, "Only a little."
Hello, my name is Melanie Thorne. As the last reader tonight, I just want to echo everybody's thanks to Pam and all of the artists here, and to Nick and Ivan and Nancy and Lexa and Morgan and everybody. You guys are amazing. This was an amazing experience, I think, for all of us. You're under the carport. Tilted metal poles propping up rust-spotted sheets of aluminum siding barely wide enough for your dad's dented pickup, which you have parked behind. It's 20 paces from the passenger door of your geoprism to the back door of your father's girlfriend's house, and you just need to get him inside, make sure he's not dead, and then you can escape. Go back to your apartment and shower the smell of his Old Spice deodorant out of your nostrils, his booze sweat off your skin. It was golden hour when you left Chuck E. Cheese's cacophony of children screaming, the dinging and chiming of arcade games, the crash of skee balls like an avalanche on repeat. Your dad's girlfriend asked you to remove him from her son's birthday party as soon as you arrived, before you could escape. You'd seen his red eyes, his limp neck, his gnashing teeth, and you'd spun on your heels as fast as possible, but Lynn caught you. "Please," she said, "for Jeremiah." The descending sun steeped the parking lot in orange embers, and long shadows from towering oak trees stretched and expanded their reach through the 30 minutes it took to coax your dad into your car. Limb by limb, he finally folded himself into the bucket seat, his Grateful Dead tank top twisted and bunched up near his chest. It would have been faster if you'd been willing to touch him. Don't puke, you said, and he flipped you off before you slammed the door. You put your textbooks in the trunk just in case. The sun has fully set now, the dim driveway lined with old lawnmowers, grimy doll heads, unusable tools. You manage to get your dad's bloated body out of the car, but he can't stand alone, so you support the bulk of his frame and hefty beer gut as you shuffle across the driveway. You try to remember if your tetanus shots are up to date. You hope he has a key. His left arm lies like a log across the back of your shoulders, and your left hand is clamped on his elbow as leverage. Dirt lodges between your toes, coats your feet in film. His flip-flops don't leave the ground as you drag him, tracing stuttering trails in the dust. 17 more steps. Your right arm attempts to hold him up at the waist while simultaneously trying to avoid pressing your fingers into the stark white skin his sagging cargo shorts have exposed, clammy like the underbelly of a frog. Your hands are bigger now, but the warm, damp air, the darkness, his heavy breathing are too familiar. You have nice legs, he'd said on the ride over, his head slumped forward, chin to chest, eyes down. You'd considered kicking him out of the car in an adjacent alley, leaving him next to a dumpster on his side so he didn't drown in his own vomit, but leaving him there in the road like he has threatened to do to you more than once. You imagined going home, feeling no guilt. He interrupted your fantasy and said, I know what you're thinking. You rolled your eyes. You don't know anything. He said, if I die, it'll be your fault. 15 steps, keep moving. You are sweating under his weight, the effort. The porch light is flickering, dying out, and it buzzes and flashes like an alarm, a lighthouse warning of an impending wreck. Could you at least try, you say, to the pockmarked metal grooves above your head? The holes look black, but you know they'd be coppery in the sun. You wish you could see the stars. You don't expect an answer, but your dad mumbles, try for what, capitalist bullshit? You say, how about picking up your feet? Sure, he says, stopping. 10 feet away from the chipped and peeling paint of the house, the ripped screens and the flimsy metal door, you shake your head at yourself. You know better. Your dad nuzzles your neck with his cold nose, his cheeks and chin prickly. You freeze. Maybe it was the wind. You tip your head to the sky. Orion's belt shines bright against the deep blue, his sword hanging at his hip. The hunter killed and cast into night forever as punishment for boasting, for thinking he would not be challenged. You're so pretty, Liz, your dad slurs in your ear. What would happen if you disappeared, stepped out from under him for once and flew away? I could let you fall, you say, loosening your grip, angling your head away from his, the illusion of distance. Drop you right here. He laughs hard, sharp, like a slap, and says, but we both know you won't.
Hello, my name is Nick Conroy. I'm the Program and Residency Director, and I'd like to ask the individual groups to come up. I'd like to introduce everyone because so you'll know who they are when you're out and about. And so I guess I'll bring up the visual artist real quick here. Lindsay Bull, please. Join me. Okay, Lindsay's not coming up. Jessica.
No, Lindsay left.
Pardon? Oh, just want everyone to come on up. So, what else? Okay. Michael Stan, Helene, Nick Norris, Luis, Lana. So, this is the visual artist group. Who else are there? Any have I left any out? No. So, they all have work in the painting studio, and Jules has work in the sculpture studio.
Nothing finished.
So mostly works in progress, but so you'll see their work and you can speak with them now you know who they are. I'd like to also bring up the musicians who are, let's see, we'll go down the list here. Andrew, where's Andrew? No, I just want to introduce you. Yeah, Andrew Kramer, Frederick. No, stay up here. Frederick, Philippa, who has work in installation in the dance studio, which is directly across from here. So, David, Sean, and Hannah Lisa, and Greg, and the literary artist we've all heard from, so come on up, and the master artist, please all take a bow together. Thank you so much for your time. So we have time to go to the studios, and at 8 o'clock, I believe we start the music program.
4 minutes. 4 minutes.
In the music studio next?